In this video, I'll be getting back into the metalwork, getting rid of all the rusted out sheet metal in this area, and fabricating all the new replacement panels I'll need in order to close the frame back up. I had a few people ask about the rust remover gel that I use. It's this Crud Cutter brand. I think I just got it at the big orange box store. I like using it. It stays on vertical surfaces pretty well while it does its magic, and it cleans up with just water. Because that seems a little antithetical to treating rust, I tend to cover it right away with weld-through primer. Laying out the new replacement outer wheel skin next to the panel I removed, you can see it was a good idea to have gone this far with it. First, I needed to mock up the new panel and figure out what I don't need and trim off the excess. Then I clamped this in place temporarily to use as a guide so I knew how the pieces I'm fabricating will match up with this panel once I have it all secured in place. For these lower structural pieces, I'm using 16 gauge sheet metal rather than 20, which is likely what most of the sheet metal would have been on this car originally. It welds up pretty nicely once you have the welder dialed in, more on that in a moment, and it gives you the peace of mind that I'm potentially rebuilding it stronger than it was originally. You might notice the welds are pretty blobby. After switching welding wire, I didn't adjust the settings and I wasn't getting very good penetration. I think I had the speed set too high and the temperature too cool. These areas on the frame have multiple overlapping layers of sheet metal, so I have more chances to get the welds right before it all goes back together. At this point, I knew something was very wrong with my welds. They just weren't sticking at all, only to the new clean metal. I finally went out and bought the proper wire, and that pretty much changed everything once I was able to get the settings just right. fabricating and patching in each of these pieces may seem like more work than just buying the whole new reproduction piece for this area, and it probably is. But I wasn't confident that once I had everything removed from this section, that I would be able to get everything back in exactly the right spot and not totally screw up everything much, much worse. I'm imagining getting all done with the restoration, putting on the wheels, and then seeing the whole rear end is sagging to one side. Doing it this way, I still have plenty of the original pieces to use as reference points to build from. I know people build their own jigs with steel tubing to help with this, but when you think about it, once you go that far, that is most definitely more work than it is doing it this way. As you can see, I finally have the welder dialed in well enough to create these nice smooth liquid metal pools for plug welds. At this point, I had turned my attention to the longitudinal section. I put the camera down the channel to try to gauge how far I'll need to cut to ensure I'm removing the worst of the worst here. I wasn't actually going to do this at first because of how confusing and complicated the sheet metal overlaps here. I'm glad I did though, or I wouldn't have noticed the passenger seatbelt mount. I started to burn through the metal with these butt welds, so I clamped a piece of copper stair cap I had removed from the staircase in my house to help it from blowing right through. I'm one of those weird people who tends to hang on to stuff like that just in case I'll need it in the future. It's usually kind of pointless, but every once in a while it works out pretty well. Finally getting some nice consistent stitching with these butt welds. This is all out of focus and kind of hard to tell what I'm doing here. I'm finishing off patching in the missing pieces of the inner overlapping layer of sheet metal that this entire section is comprised of. So that's pretty much it for the layered sheet metal in this section, although I added in one more strip for additional strength here. And that's everything on the inside. Next I'll be installing the reproduction piece and reattaching the suspension console and jack point. Thanks for watching.